All right, we are expecting that special report in just a few moments from the Pentagon. Actually, let's go right to the special report, CBS News.
As the Pentagon is about to give us an update on last evening's strikes against three key Iranian nuclear sites. Let's listen.
Joint Chiefs will demonstrate it was an incredible and overwhelming success. The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program. But it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. For the entirety of his time in office, President Trump has consistently stated for over 10 years that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. Full stop. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump. The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back. When this president speaks, the world should listen. And the U.S. military, we can back it up. The most powerful military the world has ever known. No other country on planet Earth could have conducted the operation that the chairman is going to outline this morning. Not even close. Just like Soleimani found out in the first term, Iran found out when POTUS says 60 days that he seeks peace and negotiation, he means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear program, that nuclear capability will not exist. He meant it. This is not the previous administration. The President Trump said no nukes. He seeks peace, and Iran should take that path. He sent out a truth last night saying this: any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Signed, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Iran would be smart to heed those words. He's said it before, and he means it. I want to give recognition to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Joint Staff, General Eric Kurilla at CENTCOM, who did a phenomenal job, he and his staff, all of CENTCOM. Policy, across the board, this was a joint effort, and across the Pentagon effort. I want to recognize the pilots who flew those bombers, who flew those fighters, who flew those refuelers, warriors. I want to recognize the sailors on those destroyers, in those subs, on those carriers, warriors, all of them. I want to recognize our soldiers doing air defense, base defense, QRF, warriors, all of them. Every American involved in this operation performed flawlessly. And I want to give recognition to our allies in Israel as well. This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation so that we could be ready when the President of the United States called. It took a great deal of precision. It involved misdirection and the highest of operational security. Our B-2s went in and out of downtown Tehran, of these nuclear sites, in and out and back without the world knowing at all. In that way, it was historic. A strike that included the longest B-2 Spirit bomber mission since 2001 and the first operational employment of the MOP, a massive ordnance penetrator. The mission demonstrated to the world the level of joint and allied integration that speak to the strength of our alliance and our joint forces. As President Trump has stated, the United States does not seek war. But let me be clear. We will act swiftly and decisively when our people, our partners, or our interests are threatened. Iran should listen to the President of the United States and know that he means it, every word. I want to give congratulations to our Commander-in-Chief. It was an honor to watch him lead last night and throughout, and to our great American warriors on this successful operation. God bless our troops. God bless America. And we give glory to God for his providence and continue to ask for his protection. I turn it over now to the chairman for specifics.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for recognizing all of our folks out there doing our nation's work, and nice to see everybody on this early Sunday morning. Last night, on the President's orders, U.S. Central Command, under the command of General Eric Kurilla, executed Operation Midnight Hammer, a deliberate and precise strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. This was a complex and high-risk mission carried out with exceptional skill and discipline by our joint force. I want to thank every service member, planner, operator that made this mission possible. Their actions reflect the highest standards of the United States Armed Forces. This operation was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure. It was planned and executed across multiple domains and theaters with coordination that reflects our ability to project power globally with speed and precision at the time and place of our nation's choosing. This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. I'll refer you to the graphic on the side as I walk you through some of the operational details. At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command area of responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordo and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordo. As the President stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the President stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of 4th and 5th generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Well prior to the strike, General Kurilla elevated force protection measures across the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority. This mission demonstrates the unmatched reach, coordination, and capability of the United States military. In just a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military. As the President clearly said last night, no other military in the world could have done this. I join the President and the Secretary in being incredibly proud of the air crews, naval forces, cyber operators, planners, and support teams, and commanders who made this mission possible. It is their skill, discipline, and teamwork that makes this operation possible. I am particularly proud of our discipline related to operational security, something that was of great concern to the President, the Secretary, General Kurilla, and me, and we will continue to focus on this. As we stand here this morning, many assets are still airborne, and we have hundreds deployed. I ask that we keep our warfighters on their way home and our deployed service member in our thoughts. Our joint force remains ready to defend the United States, our troops, and our interests in the region. Thank you very much.
We will take a few questions, Phil.
Me?
Yeah.
So, is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary? And to the chairman, you said the battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but do you believe that some nuclear capability in Iran remains?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The President authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Thanks for your question. I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there. But thanks for the question.
Green. No, behind you.
Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, can you tell me, was there a particular moment when the president decided to pull the trigger on this operation where he said, now, rather than being, something in the holster, now we're going to pull the trigger on it?
I would just say, having the opportunity to witness his leadership, he was fully committed to the peace process. Wanted a negotiated outcome, gave Iran every single opportunity, and unfortunately was met by stonewalling, which is why he gave them plenty of time to continue to come to the table and give up enrichment, give up the nuclear program. But there was I won't say the particular moment, there was certainly a moment in time where he realized that it had to be a certain action taken in order to minimize the threat to us and our troops. Yeah.
General, you say that General Kurilla increased force protection in Iraq, Syria, and Gulf, in those areas. Were they given any advance warning the attacks were coming? And also, Mr. Secretary, when were congressional leaders notified? How long before the attacks took place?
Sir, to your first question, the risk has clearly been rising over the last few weeks in the region. Based on that, and not a particular awareness of this operation, we've made smart decisions to minimize the risk to U.S. forces in the region.
So they were given no advance warning?
No, sir.
And congressional?
They were notified after the planes were safely out. Well, we complied with the notification requirements of the War Powers Act.
After the attacks, they were notified?
They were immediately thereafter. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary. Two questions. Do you believe you completely destroyed Iranian nuclear program? And how about Iranian ballistic missiles? Your ally Israel always saying that is biggest threat. And second question is very important. What will be your next step if Iran or militias under Iranian influence in the region attack U.S. interests or allies in the region?
And you can chime in on this too, Mr. Chairman. The battle damage assessment is ongoing, but our initial assessment, as the chairman said, is that all of our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and had the desired effect, which means especially in Fordo, which was the primary target here, we believe we achieved destruction of capabilities there. Ultimately, wherever it may be, whether it's in Iraq or Syria or bases in the Gulf, as the president said, it would be as the chairman said, it would be a very bad idea for Iran or its proxies to attempt to attack American forces. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Regarding retaliations, Iran and North Korea are cooperating on nuclear and missile development. Do you think there is a possibility that Iran, North Korea, and the other forces, such as China, will join forces to retaliate against the United States?
Well, unfortunately, because of the policies under the previous administration, we drove those countries together, and ultimately that creates a challenging environment. For this particular operation, the focus is on Iran and Iranian nuclear capabilities. That's our focus here, is to not just say that they can't have, but President Trump has said from over 20 years, frankly, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And ultimately, he decided this is the moment, given their stonewalling, when direct military action had to be taken to prevent that from happening. Yes?
Thank you very much. General Kane, I understand OPSEC, I respect OPSEC. Can you say at all what security procedures are being taken to protect U.S. troops in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East? And Secretary Hegseth, as a global war on terrorism veteran, what do you say to veterans who may be concerned the U.S. is getting into another open-ended war in the Middle East over weapons of mass destruction?
Thanks, sir, for the question. I won't comment on what force protection measures are being taken in the region. What I will say is we're being proactive and not reactive, and being very thoughtful about ensuring that we do all that we can to protect our forces out there.
And I would just say, as the president has directed and made clear, this is most certainly not open-ended. It doesn't mean it limits our ability to respond. We will respond if necessary. The most powerful military in the world is postured and prepared to defend our people. But what the president gave us, as I said, was a focused, powerful, and clear mission on the destruction of Iranian nuclear capabilities. Those were the targets. That's what was struck. That's what was overwhelming. That's what was overwhelming. That's what the Iranian regime needs to understand, as the president put out last night. He wants peace. There needs to be a negotiated settlement here. We ultimately demonstrated that Iran cannot have a nuclear capability. That is a very clear mission set on this operation. Yes, hold on. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Question for the Secretary and the Chairman. How was this strike coordinated with the Israelis on a strategic level, militarily, and on a tactical level? Was there any direct Israeli military participation in this operation?
Well, I would say certainly Israel had an incredible military success, especially at the beginning and ongoing, in degrading Iranian capabilities, in degrading Iranian launchers, MRBMs. It's been incredible to watch what our ally Israel has been able to do. And there certainly have been conversations. I mean, General Kurilla at CENTCOM has worked closely in the defense of Israel for many years. And part of this operation was the defense of Israel and the ongoing defense of Israel. But as it pertains to this strike, this was U.S. operated and U.S. led.
We took advantage of some of the preparatory work that's been done over the past week and a half in terms of axis of approach. I won't get into the particulars, but as the Secretary said, it was a U.S. strike. We made sure we were not in the same piece of airspace and sky. Aside from that, that was the extent of it.
We'll take a couple more. Yeah, right there.
Question to the Secretary first. Are you concerned whatsoever now about the reaction from U.S. allies given the strike, particularly those in the Gulf? And to the Chairman, if I may, I understand you don't want to speak to specific assets and force protection measures, but do you anticipate at least having to bring in any further assets from other theaters to aid in force protection over the coming days?
We certainly understand the challenges of allies in the region. And we have been respectful and working in collaboration with them as it pertains to basing and sensitivities there. Ultimately, they've got a lot of assets and people in those locations also where American troops are co-located. So that's a consideration of ours. We've been in close consultation with them, and we appreciate the support that we have got.
Thanks for the question on sort of the global picture, and as you know, that's one of my jobs, is to look globally at the entire range of challenges. We are always carefully considering our force posture around the world and then offering options to the Secretary and to the President. I won't comment on any future things, but the American people should know that we carefully consider those moves around the world and try to modulate as needed our force structure in the region.
Absolutely. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. What communications are being sent to the Iranians right now, and is there any possibility of diplomacy now or in the coming days?
I can only confirm that there are both public and private messages being directly delivered to the Iranians in multiple channels, giving them every opportunity to come to the table. They understand precisely what the American position is, precisely what steps they can take to allow for peace, and we hope they do so. Yes.
The president may not want an open-ended conflict. The Iranians may disagree. Are you prepared for a protracted war?
Well, anything can happen in conflict. We acknowledge that. But the scope of this was intentionally limited. That's the message that we're sending. With the capabilities of the American military, nearly unlimited. So Iran, in that sense, has a choice. But we've made it very clear to them, this is nuclear sites, this is nuclear capabilities, this is the line that the president set, and we set that back. Now is the time to come forward for peace. But I think one of the takeaways from this as well is the unprecedented level of ongoing cooperation. I can't speak highly enough of the chairman and his staff and General Kurilla in CENTCOM, what they've done to look around the corner, to pre-position, to understand how an operation like this comes together. The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. And I think Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America in Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future, and we certainly hope they take the path of negotiated peace. But I could not be more proud of how this building operated, of the precision, the sensitivity, and the professionalism of the troops involved in this effort. I will take one more. We'll take one more question. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Concerning the justification for these strikes, in March, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released their threat assessment, concluding, quote, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear programs he suspended in 2003, unquote. So what new intelligence does the U.S. have since then that the Iranians have changed their position on nuclear weapons? And does this new intelligence come from U.S. sources and methods, or are we getting this information from other countries?
Well, I would just simply say that the president's made it very clear. He's looked at all of this, all of the intelligence, all of the information, and come to the conclusion that the Iranian nuclear program is a threat, and was willing to take this precision operation to neutralize that threat in order to advance American national interests, reduce the Iranian nuclear program, and obviously collective self-defense of ourselves and our allies. So he looked at all of it, understood the nature of the threat, and took bold action I think the American people would expect in a commander-in-chief. That's all we've got. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
We have been listening as top officials there at the Pentagon describing what they're calling Operation Midnight Hammer, the U.S. airstrikes on Iran. They say it took all of 25 minutes for U.S. B-2 bombers to drop 14 bunker buster bombs on Iranian nuclear targets. They say they hit them. They went in undetected. No one in the world had any idea the United States was doing this. They were in and out of Iran without anybody knowing. Secretary Hegseth saying that Iran nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Those were his words early on, and then later he said the assessment is still ongoing. It is also worth noting that the whole operation took 25 minutes last night, 6:40 to 7:05 Eastern Time. That news conference right there went on for 26 minutes. With us now is retired U.S. Marine Corps General Kenneth McKenzie, former head of U.S. Central Command, current CBS News contributor. General, good morning to you. Americans waking up to this news, this information. What did you make of what you just saw?
Well, first of all, it was a remarkable execution by the Joint Force. The chairman and the secretary both described it very, very clearly. Remarkable capabilities that we have. We employed them last night. The other point I think that both the secretary and the chairman emphasized is the tightly focused nature of the operation, going strictly after the nuclear program. I think what we're trying to do with this strike is give the Iranians some room to maneuver. Whether or not they'll be smart enough to take that remains to be seen. And I'm sure that right now Central Command is prepared for anything that could happen as a result of this strike.
The idea that we went in there undetected, General, that was very striking. How much weaker, in your view, from where you sit, I know you're not at CENTCOM any longer, but how much weaker does it appear Iran actually is?
Well, Maurice, this is a plan that's been refined over the last 15 years. We've continually updated it, and General Kurilla has obviously done some magnificent work in planning and execution. Iran is weakened. Iran is probably the weakest they've been since I began studying the problem. Their air defenses are essentially gutted. They have very limited surveillance capability. By surveillance, I mean the ability to see airplanes flying in their territory. The plan would have been able to, I think, achieve success had Iran been at 100%. But it's always better to face an attrited enemy. And this is a very significant and dangerous time for Iran. You know, the highest goal of Iranian statecraft is to preserve the regime. The regime is now threatened, and they have proven demonstrably unable to defend their country.
Okay, General, thank you so much. Let's go to CBS's Holly Williams, who is in Iraq, near the Iran border, near the city of Erbil, I believe it is. Holly, what are you getting in terms of reaction from Iranians outside their country?
Good morning, Maurice. Well, Iran's foreign minister said this morning that the U.S. had committed a grave violation of international law and that Iran has to respond. Now, that suggests that the Iranian regime feels compelled to retaliate against the U.S., perhaps because to do otherwise would be seen as a humiliation. But even before these U.S. airstrikes, Iran had already accused the U.S. of being complicit in Israel's attacks, and it threatened to retaliate against U.S. military bases. Now, U.S. bases are scattered across the Middle East. They're clearly potential targets for retaliation. Perhaps the most obvious targets are the U.S. bases here in Iraq, simply because they are right next door. There are also around 40,000 American troops here in the Middle East, and they are now on high alert, according to that briefing that you just heard. Now, back in 2020, the Iranians attacked a U.S. base here in Iraq, al-Assad, with ballistic missiles. We were there in the days following and saw the extensive damage, though no U.S. service members were killed. I guess the question now is, now that Iran has been weakened by more than 9 days of war with Israel, what exactly kind of retaliation is it capable of? We don't know for sure, but we may find out.
Okay, Holly Williams in Erbil this morning in Iraq. Thank you for the insight. Let's go to senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Weijia, any more details about who was in the Situation Room, how the president came to this decision, and when he decided to pull the trigger?
Well, Maurice, what is very telling is the new information we received during that briefing about the exact time of the first strike, which was 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. We know that President Trump did not arrive back here to Washington, to the White House, until 6:03 p.m. He walked in 1 minute later and then went to the Situation Room to watch these strikes being carried out less than 40 minutes later. And he was surrounded by his national security team, the Vice President, his Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and several other officials, including intelligence officials, as they watched the teams here carry out the strike. But the other question that you ask, Maurice, is so critical, which is when the president exactly made this decision. Because as you remember, he was saying that Iran had this self-imposed, that he imposed 2-week deadline to finally come to the negotiating table. And we had sources saying that he really did want to find some kind of diplomatic off-ramp. But as we just heard from Secretary Hegseth, there was a moment when he realized that was not going to happen. And what we don't know is whether that moment was when he publicly signaled to the world that Iran had 2 weeks left, or if it was before that. Because obviously, as we heard, this was a mission that took a lot of advanced planning, and TikTok was critical in order for that precision to happen. And so we will be putting together that timeline to better understand exactly how the president came to this decision. Today, he does not have any public events on his schedule, but his last message that he broadcast via social media was a warning to Iran that any retaliation would be met with more force from America. Maurice.
Yeah, the Defense Department officials there also saying, you know, it's up to Iran now, their next move, whether they actually want peace. What changed? You have to wonder, Weijia, in these past few days. I know that's what you're saying there. We just don't know at this point, right?
Well, Maurice, there's a possibility that nothing had changed and that he had already decided that he was going to carry out this mission, because our colleague Jennifer Jacobs reported that he wanted to be in a position of strength as he heads to the NATO summit in just a couple days. He is scheduled to leave on Tuesday here. Remember, he rushed back from the G7 summit in order to monitor the escalating situation in Iran. And the reason why this matters is because in both instances, he is on the world stage, and he has made very clear that he believes the U.S. has to show strength, and that is how you achieve peace. And so we know that he wanted to have some sort of definitive deliverable to bring ahead of the NATO summit, and that is the end to Iran's nuclear program in one way or another, Maurice. So this is the path that he chose. He will be meeting with those world leaders in just a couple days.
Okay, Weijia Jiang at the White House, thank you so much. Let's go to Charlie D'Agata at the Pentagon. Charlie, you were at the news conference here. You asked a key question. is the administration ready for a long and protracted war? I don't know if you got the answer that would be definitive, but they said it's a bad idea for Iran to retaliate. What did you make of what you heard, Charlie?
You know, the question, that is the question, isn't it? Because the Iranians have never not retaliated. When Soleimani was assassinated under the Trump administration, they fired several cruise missiles into the most exposed and vulnerable U.S. base in that region, al-Assad, which is in Iraq. We were told today by Secretary and Joint Chiefs of Staff that they have taken specific measures in places like Iraq and Syria and in the Gulf, where the American forces are well within reach, not only of Iranian missiles, but Iranian-backed proxies, in fact, surrounded by them in the case of Iraq and Syria. So there wasn't a sort of definitive answer, and we didn't want to really get into operational security that would show the vulnerabilities of our U.S. forces there. But it is worth noting that none of them, it was pointed out in that press conference, nobody in that region was given notice of the operation until it was over. There had already been enhanced security measures in place. As we've reported, you and I have spoken about it before, about the beefing up of U.S. military presence in that region. There's a carrier strike group there. There are a dozen destroyers. You heard in that press conference a submarine. We never know how many submarines are in the region, but the submarine took part in that attack against Iran. So, you know, the U.S. military is beefed up, and there are several bases within reach. You know, you've got the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, Kuwait. Those will already have robust security measures because they are huge bases, including the UAE. But in the areas where the U.S. forces are more exposed, the 2,500 or so in Iraq, where Holly was just reporting from, in northern Iraq, there are a number of forces there, parts of Syria. This is where U.S. forces are well within reach and don't have the kind of, you know, anti-air support that you would have at these larger bases.
Charlie, you know, to say that this is limited and it's a bad idea for Iran to retaliate, that they went in there and they got what they wanted. Nuclear ambitions have been obliterated, but we still assess that. That's what Pete Hegseth said in two different parts of the news conference. How degraded can we tell at this point is Iran's capabilities?
Do you know, that's a key question. When we talk about the nuclear capabilities or nuclear programs being obliterated, extremely severe damage, these are some of the words that were used. We know that the Israelis, not just in the current bombing campaign that started just over a week ago in degrading Iran's fight back in air defenses, which I think was clear, by the way, when we were told that U.S. forces went in there and not a shot was fired, according to Joint Chiefs of Staff, either going in or going out, which may say something about Iran's defenses as far as their ability. Estimates had their ballistic missiles at around 3,000. We estimate maybe 1,000 of them have been fired so far against Israel, and the United States has defended Israel in that regard. As far as how much they've got left and the capability of firing them, because a number of platforms have been taken out, that is unknown, or at least it's not something that's being shared here. But to say that they're completely obliterated, which was referring to their nuclear program, doesn't necessarily mean that their ballistic missile program is obliterated.
That is correct. Okay, Charlie D'Agata at the Pentagon, thank you so much. Joining us now is CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd. Sam, good morning to you. CBS News reporting FBI has increased efforts to monitor possible domestic sleeper cells. We have seen New York City hardening its religious and other areas around its city. What else do you know about security steps being taken on the homeland?
The U.S. government was already on heightened alert for threats from Iranian-backed individuals, whether individuals directed by Iran to strike U.S. assets or individuals inspired by Iran to do so. In the aftermath of last night's strikes, I can tell you, Maurice, that police jurisdictions across the country are on heightened alert. They are increasing their operational footprint in front of religious sites, cultural sites, Israeli diplomatic sites, and more. And all Americans should exercise caution in this environment. At the same time, the FBI and other members of the intelligence community will be doubling down on intelligence collection and analysis to try to monitor for any Iranian threats here in the homeland. So there is an intelligence component right now, as well as an operational component underway.
Best you can tell, what's the general consensus on the likelihood of that happening? Do you have any feel for that, or is that just really an unknown at this point?
Well, we know that Iran has a decades-long history of exercising its proxies all around the world, in Asia, in South America, in the United States, and in Europe. At the same time, we also know that particularly post-October 7th, individuals, again, both directed and inspired by Iran, did seek to take action here in the homeland. So I don't want to guess on a hypothetical probability here, but again, I would advise all Americans to exercise caution here in the homeland and when traveling abroad. All Americans traveling abroad should register with the U.S. Embassy for their travel and receive alerts if the security situation does deteriorate. At the same time, Maurice, we also have to be aware that Iran has advanced cyber capabilities, and it is possible that Iran chooses to activate both a physical response or response. And federal, state, and local authorities, after speaking to my sources, I can tell you, are on heightened alert for both of those possibilities.
Okay, Samantha Vinograd. Sam, thank you so much. I want to bring back General McKenzie here. General, you are the former head of CENTCOM. What would the next steps be here?
I think right now CENTCOM is focused on ensuring that our forces in the region are ready for any potential Iranian response. We're also prepared to defend our embassies and our U.S. citizens. That process goes on all the time regardless, but we're at a very heightened state now, and I'm sure they're taking every precaution they can to ensure that we'll be able to defend against whatever the Iranians choose to do. The other half of that equation is the Iranians needs to be very clear to them, and I think we've made it clear to them that if they choose to attack us, our response will be overwhelming. And we have that capability as well. So CENTCOM's working those two lines of effort, I'm very sure, this morning.
What's the mindset of military leaders at this point? Could you take us inside the room?
Sure. I can speak directly to after the strike on Qasem Soleimani. So you've completed an operation. Your business is now to look to the next problem. The next problem is going to be the Iranian response. So it was a great operation last night. Like a football play in the NFL, it's over. They're going to run another play in about 15 seconds. You need to be ready for it. That's what you're thinking right now.
That is the truth. Okay, General McKenzie, thank you so much for the insight into all our correspondents as well. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7 and your local news. For many of you, CBS News Sunday Morning is coming up shortly. And later on Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan will speak with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as well as Senator Tim Kaine. This has been a special report here for CBS News. I'm Maurice Dubois in New York. Have a good day.
This is CBS News New York.
And good morning. It is 8:46 on this Sunday, June 22nd. I'm Elaine Kihom.
Good morning once again, everybody. I'm Doug Williams. Thanks for joining us here, as always, on your Sunday morning. We'll be with you until about 9 o'clock for CBS Sunday Morning. You've been watching the special report with Maurice Dubois. And once again, breaking this morning, we have seen smoke rising up from the site of the Fordow nuclear facility in Iran. It was one of 3 nuclear sites struck by U.S. forces last night. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Air Force General Dan Kaine updated the nation just moments ago on the strikes in Iran from the Pentagon. Zaneem Maldonado has been following the story this morning for us. She'll have a report in just about a minute's time.
But first, we do have some extreme weather that we need to tell you about. So our John Elliott is joining us now with your first alert forecast. John?
Thank you, Elaine and Doug. Good morning, everybody. So it's the heat, the humidity, and morning storm. 75 degrees right now, and numbers around the area very mild. I want to point out, tonight we'll likely see morning lows in the 80s. So the AC is on. I know that's stressful. You've got some cooler air in place here because of the cloud cover, because we've got some moisture on the move through Moorburg and Moore Passaic, the city as well. It's light rain in the city down through parts of Brooklyn, and then some heavier rain North Shore into Suffolk. Follow that line into more of the Hudson Valley, and then farther to the north and west, now part of our area, Sullivan Pike County, you are dealing with some very heavy rain. We've been watching wind and frequent lightning, and these flood warnings will persist for the next few hours. Any additional rain in these swollen creeks and there's ponding on area roadways will cause some issues. And then remember, after that, it's the heat and humidity. So take care.
All right, John, thanks so much. We're going to check back in with John for a full forecast in just a few minutes. To always get the first alert on the extreme heat, the storms we've seen in our area, you can download the free CBS News app.
And during that update from the Pentagon earlier this hour, officials said the U.S. military strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities were an incredible, in their words, and overwhelming success. They said it took months and weeks of positioning to carry out.
Zinnia Maldonado is joining us once again live here in studio. Zinnia has a recap and a breakdown of the events of last night and how they've been spoken about by U.S. officials this morning already. Zinnia?
Well, Doug and Elaine, we learned a lot over the last hour. Hegseth, first of all, clarifying that the strikes did not target Iranian troops or people, as the focus was on Iranian nuclear capabilities. He said battle damage assessment is ongoing this morning, but they believe they achieved what they intended to do: destruction, obliterating Iran's nuclear ambitions. Now, Hegseth stating that the operation President Trump planned was, quote, bold and it was brilliant, showing that the world, that American deterrence is back, stating when this president speaks, the world should listen. Hegseth took a moment to recognize those involved, stating every American involved performed flawlessly, and he also gave recognition to U.S. allies. He said the U.S. does not seek war, but we will act swiftly and decisively when our people, partners, or interests are threatened, and that Iran should listen to President Trump. Take a listen.
The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back. When this president speaks, the world should listen.
Secretary Hegseth was asked by a reporter about regime change and said that the mission was not about that, stating the president again authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to the country's national interest. Doug and Elaine.
Zinnia, thank you. Following the U.S. attack on Iran, Tehran said it launched one of its biggest ballistic missiles towards Israel. The missile was allegedly sent along a barrage that targeted the state, with some of them making it through Israel's defenses. Here's a look at some of the damage done to Tel Aviv as of this morning. The Israeli Health Ministry says more than 80 people were wounded in this attack. There are also reports of heavy damage in the port town of Haifa that has already seen so much damage since everything has escalated in these discussions with Iran.
Joining us now to discuss the military action is Richard Nephew, senior research scholar at Columbia's Center on Global Energy Policy. Over the course of his career, he was director for Iran at the National Security Council during the Obama administration from 2011 to 2013.
Richard, thanks so much for joining us this morning. For folks in the tri-state area that are concerned about Iran's capabilities, what do you see as the most likely form of retaliation on their part should they decide to go with that route?
Well, I think there's two things that we should think of right now. First, the Iranians absolutely have the ability to target U.S. bases that are in the Persian Gulf, to target ships that are transiting the Straits of Hormuz, as well as to use terrorist attacks on targets worldwide. So there will be some kind of Iranian retaliation against the United States. We have to see whether or not the Iranians decide to take a softer approach to preserve future options or go really hard. The second big thing is that they're probably going to continue developing their nuclear program. So we don't really know how effective these strikes were in terms of really damaging Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons. There's still a lot of questions about their nuclear material as well as other facilities.
And I know we're going to ask more about that in just a moment, but first back to the homeland for a bit here. Should Americans, bottom line here, Richard, be more concerned, especially here in the tri-state area, in a place like New York City, that perhaps now this area could be targeted?
Well, I think that there is a risk. The Iranians absolutely have demonstrated a capability to use terrorist tactics around the world. At the same time, the United States is well aware of those as well, right? And so we've got FBI teams, local law enforcement teams, and others that are tracking operatives and others who may be trying to engage in these attacks. So what I would say is, yes, there is a risk, but I would also encourage people to go about their normal business. Maybe a little bit additional vigilance, but trust that their security services are looking out for security in the United States.
Someone who knows Iran the way you do, knows the region the way you do, the Trump administration and U.S. military telling very different stories of the effect of these strikes than the one that Iran's state media is telling. So if the U.S. did indeed destroy these 3 sites, what would that mean globally and across our country?
Well, I would say, 2 things can be true simultaneously. The strikes could have incapacitated the Fordo facility. Strikes could have incapacitated the Natanz facility. But it also may be true, I think it's likely, that the Iranians still have highly enriched uranium, which could be useful for nuclear weapons purposes as well. So, it really is a question now of what our intelligence picture is, whether or not we can track the material in the country and be able to respond as new sites develop and as we get a picture of what the Iranian nuclear reconstitution effort will look like.
And to follow up on that, Richard, where is the most reliable intelligence about Iran's nuclear program coming from? Is it the United States intelligence services? Is it the Israeli intelligence services? How reliable is that information?
Well, I think both the U.S. and the Israeli intelligence services have a good picture about Iran's nuclear program. But unfortunately, one of the best sources was the public reporting that the International Atomic Energy Agency was making about where Iran's nuclear materials were, all according to treaty obligation. That's not happening now because both the conflict has meant inspectors can't go to sites, and of course the Iranians now are highly allergic to providing any of that kind of information. So our picture in Iran's nuclear program has probably degraded.
And has there been some development? Obviously, this is information that is tightly held, but along the lines of where Iran might be in its uranium enrichment, something that would explain why now, in terms of this particular inflection point, why a strike by the United States military at this point?
So we have some information that suggests that Iran is getting much closer to being able to produce nuclear weapons. This is, again, public. They produced highly enriched uranium they could quickly turn into bomb material probably within 5 to 6 days. But that's been the case for a couple of years now. So it's troubling, it's worrying from a nuclear nonproliferation perspective. It's really troubling, but it doesn't actually show why now. And I think this goes to a real open question, whether or not, as the Israelis have indicated, there's an active weapons development program in place, or whether or not they're worried that one could happen very quickly. That's the thing we don't really know about.
Richard Nephew, can't thank you enough for joining us and giving us your perspective. We appreciate it. So do our viewers. Thank you. And we will continue to cover this story on our website and streaming platform as well, cbsnewyork.com, for all of our coverage to this point.